everyone? My name is Jamon McKinney, or you can just call me Juice because that is my nickname. Today, I'm breaking down the Seattle Seahawks schedule, and I'm going to tell you, how their roster is going to look heading into 2020, and we'll give a record prediction for the Seattle Seahawks towards the end of this video. So let's talk about these Seahawks. Last year, nearly won the division in Week 17 versus the 49ers. You were inches away, but it did not happen. However, you did still make the playoffs as a wild card team. But then when you went to Green Bay, Wisconsin, you got that work from that bad man named Aaron Rodgers. And by the way, I am a Green Bay Packers fan, so I'm going to gloat a little bit right here. Seattle fans, how that L tastes right there. How that L tastes. All right, that bad man did y'all dirty. Okay, but either way, not going to brag anymore right there. Still was a very successful season for the Seattle Seahawks right here. And going forward, I'm confident that the Seattle Seahawks are going to be in the playoffs once again for two reasons, simply. Number one, Russell Wilson. Number two, Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson are one of the best quarterback and coach duos in the entire NFL. And obviously, you like to have a great offensive line. You like to have a great defense. Obviously, your weapons are key. But if you don't have anything else, get the quarterback and head coach right in the NFL. And guess what? If you get those two things right, you're going to win a lot of games. Okay, so off of general principle, off of Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson's greatness alone, this team is going to win, in my opinion, anywhere from 8 to 10 games just based off those two variables right there. Russell Wilson is an elite quarterback. To me, he's the second best quarterback in the NFL to Patrick Mahomes. He's amazing, okay? Now, I want to address Pete Carroll really quickly. I think that Pete Carroll is a pretty darn good head coach. He's a great motivator. He's a very bright head coach. He's an excellent teacher of men. He continues to mentor his players. He's a good relator of players. He's a player's coach, no doubt. And he's a very good defensive mind. However, I think that Pete Carroll is hurting the Seattle Seahawks football team at times because I don't think he realizes how great Russell Wilson is. Sometimes I just wish Pete Carroll would stop trying to establish the run so much, and I just wish that he would give Russell Wilson more keys to this offense on a more consistent basis. When Russell Wilson is running that show, this Seahawks team gets busy, okay? So I think that Pete Carroll needs to give the keys to the offense more so to Russell Wilson. Okay, and now I understand that you want to run the football. You want to be a run-heavy team. I get that. But you have to find a more heavy balance towards maximizing Russell Wilson. So that's the only real adjustment I think Pete Carroll needs to make. Other than that, he's a very good head coach. Now on offense, I think the Seattle Seahawks have a chance to have a top 5 offense this year. Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, and Carlos Hyde, those are 3 legit running backs right there. Okay, the wide receiver core, one of the best in all of football. Don't be fooled by what some of the people in the media tell you about the fact that Russell Wilson doesn't have weapons to throw to. No, Russell Wilson has some very good pass catchers. Tyler Lockett had a career year last year. He was a 1,000-yard receiver. He had a career high in yards and catches. I believe he's going to take an even bigger step this upcoming season. DK Metcalf, as a rookie, had 900 yards and 7 touchdowns. I was very high on DK Metcalf, and when he fell to the Seattle Seahawks, I said, yep, that's a perfect fit. I did not understand why DK Metcalf dropped so much, but luckily for Seattle, they've got a very good solid wide receiver. Now, a player to look out for is Phillip Dorsett. Okay, Phillip Dorsett has not been able to make it work with the Indianapolis Colts and the New England Patriots, which is kind of disappointing because you would think that you could look good with Andrew Luck and Tom Brady throwing you the football, but for whatever reason, Phillip Dorsett just has not worked and has not clicked with those offenses, but he's a very talented player. He's got some speed. There is some dynamic playmaking ability from Phillip Dorsett if you get the ball in his hands. So maybe Russell Wilson can get the best out of him. Now the tight end group, I like it a lot. Greg Olsen, very good veteran tight end that comes in this year. He was an excellent pickup. Will Disley had a very solid season last year before getting hurt. Jacob Hollister, I like him a lot. And Luke Wilson is not a bad tight end by any stretch. So you have about 4 really good tight ends right there. Now the offensive line is going to be one of the bigger questions on this football team. Obviously, Dwayne Brown, when healthy, is one of the better offensive tackles in all of football. He's excellent. Now, outside Dwayne Brown, I'm not too sure about this offensive line. However, Seattle did make at least somewhat of an effort to try to improve that unit of the football team. In the offseason, they signed Brandon Shell. They also brought in Chance Warmack, okay? BJ Finney, Cedric Obi, okay, from the Jaguars, who's a former first-round pick. So you would hope that a couple of those guys can maybe come in and contribute and maybe start for this team. Now, it's a shortened training camp this year. You're going to have less preseason games. So I don't know how well this offensive line is going to play in 2020, but I do know that they're going to be well coached. And I do know that they may not be the most talented group in the NFL, but they're going to be well coached. So that's good enough for me. And Russell Wilson is a mobile quarterback, so that is a plus. Now, a linebacker, I'm going to go to the defense now, okay? The defense right here is sort of a question mark for this team as well, because they let this team down in the playoffs versus Aaron Rodgers. They could not get off the field and get the ball back to Russell Wilson in the fourth quarter versus Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. In that first half, they were not very good. Now, the question for the Seattle Seahawks defense is, where is the pass rush going to come? I like the rest of the defense outside the pass rush, okay? The linebacker core with Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright, and Jordan Brooks, the rookie out of Texas Tech, who to me was a little bit overdrafted, but I do think he's a good player. It's one of the best in all of football. The secondary, led by Shaquille Griffin and Quandre Diggs, who you added in the offseason, I think the secondary is pretty rock solid. Where is this pass rush going to come from? Maybe it's going to come from Bruce Irvin. We don't know. Maybe it's going to come from LJ Collier, a guy that the Seahawks spent a first-round pick on, who did not have a great rookie season. If Seattle can find somewhat of a pass rush, this defense has a chance to be one of the 10 best defenses in all of football, because at all the other levels outside of the pass rush, I like this defense. Now, if you can potentially bring back Jadeveon Clowney, that could be a plus, but I don't think Jadeveon Clowney is coming back to this football team. So we'll see about the defense, but I think the defense is competent enough. As long as they just hold opponents to under 30 points, Russell Wilson is good enough to carry this team over the top. You're going to score 20 to 25 points each game at the bare minimum with Russell Wilson as your quarterback. So as long as the defense can just be solid, Seattle will be okay. Now, I'm going to pick Seattle to win this division at 11-5 this year. However, I don't know how far this team can go in the playoffs, simply because I think this team is too Russell Wilson dependent. If Russell Wilson plays great, this team can beat anyone. But if Russell Wilson has a bad quarter or a bad game, this team is toast. We saw versus the Green Bay Packers. Russell Wilson was excellent in the second half of that game. But in the first half, he laid an egg. He was not very good in the first half, and the team fell into the tank. They fell behind very fast versus the Packers. So if this team can just be solid around Russell Wilson, this team can win the Super Bowl easily, because he's a great quarterback. What we saw last year versus the Packers, versus the Ravens, versus the Saints, with Teddy Bridgewater starting, when they faced well-coached teams and teams that had better overall rosters than them, they got bodied. They got pushed around at times. So I think Seattle's an 11-5 football team based on Russell Wilson and the offense's greatness. Okay, maybe I should reword that. Based on Russell Wilson's greatness and the complementary pieces that he has on offense. That sounds a little bit better right there. I'm not the best with English, guys, okay? Bear with me. All right, but look, this team could easily win 12 games. I don't think they're a 13-3 football team. I think there's just a little bit too many holes on this roster for me to say that they're going to be a 13-3 football team. But I do think that this Seattle team is a team that's going to win about 11 games this year. Let's dive into the schedule a little bit right here. Week number 1 at Atlanta. Week number 2 versus New England. Week number 3 versus Dallas. And week number 4 versus Miami. Let's go over the first 4 games. You could be in a position in which you start off 0-2. I think Atlanta has a chance to be a pretty good football team this year, and Matt Ryan, for the most part in his career, has had success versus Seattle. Now, that game's on the road. If it was in Seattle, I would probably favor Seattle a little bit more, but I think that probably will be a loss. Now, Cam Newton and the New England Patriots are coming to town in week number 2. You'll probably win that game because it's a home game, but do not be shocked if you lose that game. Now, Dallas is one of those other teams that has given Seattle a couple of problems over the years. Okay, so We'll see if you can beat Dallas. I think you can. And Miami, at Miami, it's on the road. They have a good secondary, so that could give Seattle a little bit of a scare. But I think that at worst, Seattle starts out 2-2, and at best, probably 4-0. You could start 4-0. Now, Minnesota, week number 5. You've owned Minnesota the last couple years. They might be due for a win versus you, so just keep that in mind. Now, you have a bye week up next, then at Arizona, and then the 49ers at home. That's a tough stretch right there. Now, after your bye week, you could go 2-0 after the bye. You could lose to Minnesota, but either way, I think you'll win a couple of those games at least, okay? Now, week 9 and 10 versus Buffalo and the Rams on the road, I think you'll at least split with those two teams. You could go 2-0 versus those two teams because I think Russell Wilson is just head and shoulders above Jared Goff and Josh Allen. But those two teams are pretty talented teams in their own right. So just be on the lookout right there. Now, going forward, week 11 versus the Cardinals, that's probably a win. I think you actually split with Arizona this year and probably San Francisco. I think you have a chance to actually sweep the Rams, even though the Rams have played you tough the last couple years. So you could end up being 3-3 in the division, or maybe even 4-2. Just keep that in mind right there. Now, at Philadelphia, I think that's one of the few games I'm going to say that that's going to be a loss. Philadelphia is just due for a win versus Seattle, so that's probably a loss. Now, the last 5 games of the season versus the Giants, versus the Jets, versus the Redskins, versus the Rams, and at the 49ers, that's one of the more favorable stretches of your entire season. Now, at Washington, do not sleep on that game. Washington has the defensive line to get after Russell Wilson and make him uncomfortable. And we've seen the Seattle Seahawks lay a couple eggs in the regular season in the past. Heck, this team barely beat the Bengals last year, who were picking number 1 overall in the draft. So don't overlook any opponents. And at the 49ers, week 17, that could be for the division. So if I were to bet money, I would probably take Russell Wilson to win that game, but it could go either way. Either way, you slice it. I think Seattle actually wins this division around 11-5. I see about a 12-win team at best, and I see about a 10-win team at worst. I don't think this team falls below 10 wins as long as Russell Wilson is healthy. And Seattle, they should be competing for a top 2 to 3 seed. I do think Seattle returns to the playoffs in 2020, led by Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please also note that the Juice Alert Sports Podcast is not just a YouTube channel. It is available on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this content with all your friends. This podcast is my favorite thing in the entire world right now. It is my passion. And I want more people to listen to this podcast. I really want this podcast to grow. Also, a fun fact about me is that I want to go into the sports broadcasting and media world once I graduate from the University of Toledo, a college in Northern Ohio. I currently am a freshman there right now. I am looking to become one of the next great sports broadcasters and analysts out in the world. And I potentially would like to start my own network if this podcast really truly grows. Or if I fall short of that goal, I would love to work for a big-time network like ESPN or Fox Sports 1. I am open to all networks. So if you believe in my dreams and you see or hear my passion through the screen, be sure to tell all your friends about the Juice Alert Sports Podcast. Stay motivated, you guys. Have a God-blessed day, and I'm out.